Our next presenter can easily be described as a superstar of Rotary District 7570. Take some time and read his detailed biography on page 7 of your program, but in summary, he's assumed roles from club president, several district chairs, district governor. He was on the RI Board of Directors and vice president of Rotary International. He's also a Wahoo, and I would like to apologize. And I'm sorry that Joe Harris and the UVA basketball team did not turn up to the North Carolina State game, but perhaps they'll get invited to the dance. Mr. Adamson has been actively involved with RILA for many, many years, something that I have had the pleasure to work with as well. Part of that weekend experience at the end of Virginia Tech is the Drug and Alcohol Prevention Speech Contest. Mr. Adamson will tell you a bit about it and introduce the winners.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, did you know that psychologists tell us that the fear of public speaking is greater than the fear of death itself? That does not apply to past district governors, psychologists also say. Each year for the past 16 years, we've given 30 high school students in our district the opportunity to brave this greatest of fears. The purpose of the speech contest is to have students speak to other students about the issues of drug and alcohol abuse. In 16 years, we have had over 400 students speak to a total of over 10,000 students on these issue of drug and alcohol abuse. Well, let me tell you a little bit about the contest. First of all, clubs select students from their local high schools and then send those students to present at our district contest at the weekend of our Rotary Youth Leadership Seminar at Virginia Tech in December. In the morning, the drug and alcohol speech contest students present to panels of judges, and the judges typically include Virginia Tech professors and Radford professors. We've had most of whom are Rotarians and Rotaractors. The list of our judges included this year spouse of past District Governor Ned Lester Roslin, the spouse of our current governor, Woody, whose spouse is Lori, who's not here, Jim Owen, a Rotarian in Blacksburg, who is counselor for the Rotaract Club there and a past professor of English at Virginia Tech, and the spouse of our incoming governor, Sandy Mabry, also participated. The top 6 from the morning are selected by the judges and then present to the 130 Youth Leadership Seminar students from the high school in the afternoon. The students then vote for the top 3 two of whom will present this morning. One of them was ill and was not able to attend here. There's also a regional contest that we've participated in over the past 16 years held in North Carolina that includes student contestants from Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. And our students, by the way, have won that contest in 4 of those 16 years. Let me introduce the 2 speakers who will present their speeches to you this morning. I know that you will enjoy them. Our first speaker is Madison Flick. Madison is a junior at Graham High School in Bluefield, Virginia. She's involved in the Beta Club, the Cadre Club, Prom and Homecoming Committees, and is the Interact Club Secretary. She's a majorette in her high school marching band, competes in forensic tournaments, and works part-time as a sales associate at Justice in Bluefield. She hopes to attend the University of Virginia, thank you very much, Madison, and become a speech-language pathologist. Please welcome Madison Flick.
It's no secret that drugs and alcohol have infiltrated our culture. We see it everywhere, in movies, music, and TV shows. I live in an area where drug abuse is especially bad, and I often wonder how people get to the point of being completely addicted to drugs. Did they just wake up one morning and decide to sacrifice their lives to substance abuse? I believe that people who become drug and alcohol abusers do so because they've given into some kind of lie. Lies like, it's all natural, so it can't be bad for you, or you won't get hooked on the first try. How about, you only live once, so you might as well live it up? Unfortunately, to many young people, these don't sound like lies. In fact, they sound pretty appealing, and that's where our problem begins. How are we going to solve this problem? We need to expose the truth. The truth can be hard, and people are going to get hurt, but it's more important now than ever before. I want to talk a little bit about how the drug and alcohol problem is created. First of all, younger teens are so easily influenced by their peers and vulnerable. Unfortunately, that means if they fall in with the wrong crowd and begin to hang out with people who abuse drugs and alcohol, then they too will become victims to that cycle of abuse. Also, teens turn to drugs and alcohol because of boredom. Trust me, I live in a small town and I know how hard it can be when there's nothing to do, but I also know that drugs and alcohol are not the best way to shake things up. It might seem innocent enough at first, just a few beers before a football game or a little pot on the weekends. That's not so bad, right? Well, what many people don't realize is that alcohol and marijuana are gateway drugs. People begin using those substances, and before long, they're hooked on a whole range of harder drugs that can be nearly impossible to get off of. I'd also like to point out that anyone can be a drug addict or an alcoholic. We often think of an alcoholic as some bum begging for change on the street, or a drug addict as some guy sitting in jail, but it can be anyone, a parent, teacher, a friend, or even a cop. Drugs don't discriminate. If you give drugs the opportunity to take over your life, they will. It doesn't matter who you are, what kind of car you drive, or how much money you have. Don't give them that opportunity. Now I want to talk about how we can solve this problem. I mentioned earlier how easily influenced younger teens are, and while peer pressure can be a bad thing, it can also be a good thing. Older teens like us need to use our influence for good. Someone is always watching. I remember when I was a high school freshman, I was terrified of the seniors. I didn't want to look them in the eye. I didn't want them to know my name. I just tried to keep a low profile and stay out of their way. But that doesn't mean I wasn't watching them. I noticed how the girls dressed and wore their hair, and I saw how they interacted with each other in the hallways and outside of school. Just because I didn't have a personal relationship with any of them doesn't mean they didn't influence me. Now, many of us are at the point in our high school careers when the little freshmen are scared of us. We have enormous influence over them, and we can use this influence to help stop drug and alcohol abuse. All we have to do is live our lives in the right way, and pretty soon someone's going to notice and follow suit. We also need smart, confident young people to make the right choices about drugs and alcohol. Don't get me wrong, I think it's very important to educate young people about drugs and alcohol in schools, but it's also important to teach them to be confident and to stand up for themselves. That way when they're being pressured, they know how to say no. We need plenty of alternatives for drug use. Places like youth groups, clubs, and sporting events offer teens a place to go where they can spend their time in a positive way. Also, we need to help our law enforcement. Drug use and underage drinking is a crime, so we need to make sure we're treating it like such. If you know of someone who's selling drugs or a place where drug deals often occur, you really need to speak up. You can even do it anonymously, so if you have something to say, don't hesitate. You're helping create a safer, healthier community. I also would encourage everyone to be aware of the resources available in your community for recovering drug addicts. As I mentioned earlier, recovery from hard drugs is a hard and unforgiving process, but luckily there are individuals and organizations out there helping people reclaim their lives. I want everyone to support these groups because helping people take back their lives is such a worthy cause. In conclusion, I just want to talk about how many resources teens today have. We have a world of knowledge at our fingertips. We can share ideas and communicate with people around the world, and there are even multi-million-dollar companies cater to our likes and interests. We're pretty important. And I know this might sound a little cliche after our last election season, but we are competing with every other nation on earth to be the best. Our generation determines the fate of our nation. We determine whether the United States will continue to be the greatest nation on earth, or whether we will decline and allow some other nation to rise up. I know we can be the best. Our generation is talented, resourceful, and creative, but it's not going to be enough. Way too many of our minds are falling through the cracks and becoming victims to drug and alcohol abuse. If this continues, there's no way we're going to be the best. As the leaders of our generation, it is our job to step up, take responsibility, and set the example, because today's teens are just too important to let their lives be ruined by drugs and alcohol. Thank you.
Thank you, Madison. Our next presenter is Robin de Azagra. She was born in Reston. Her family moved to Winchester, Virginia in the year 2000. She is 17, currently a senior at John Hanley High School in Winchester. She's been a member of the Hanley Interact Club for 3 years. She was junior class representative her junior year and currently holds the position of treasurer of the Interact Club. She was a competitive gymnast for 6 years. She currently teaches gymnastics, has studied piano for 9 years. She has been accepted and will attend the College of William and Mary this fall. Robin says, "Thank you, Rotarians, for providing me an opportunity to explore public speaking. I feel very strongly about preventing substance abuse and hope that my speech will inspire others to reach out and make a difference." Please welcome Robin.
Who am I to tell you not to do drugs and alcohol? I'm a 17-year-old girl from Winchester, Virginia, who lives in a relatively normal family. Where is my authority? I'm not your best friend, your girlfriend, your sister, or your mom, but I am someone who cares about what is happening to our peers every day and who wants to make a difference. So, what's the first step? Well, we all know that a boring lecture with countless statistics isn't going to cut it, so I'm going to try and reach you in a different way. Bear with me. But imagine that this speech is part of an auditory Twitter feed, like on twitter.com. I will give you small bits of information throughout that can easily be transferred from person to person by a simple retweet. I hope to inspire you through some myth busting, my personal experience, and some ideas for prevention. So sit back and prepare for a new era on the war on drug and alcohol abuse. They said it would be the best high I ever had. Hashtag, where am I? They said I wouldn't get hooked on the first one. Hashtag cravings. They said it would help me forget my problems. Hashtag blackout. It's too bad that everything they said was all a lie. No matter what the people who are pressuring you say, there is likely to be little truth, or at least a lurking flip side. So who can we believe? The answer? Learn the information and then only trust yourself. In order for you to say no with confidence, you have to know what that drug or drink in their hand really is and what it could do to you. It's up to you, not them. Guess what? 3,000 teens die every year from DUI accidents. Hashtag not okay. That is 3,000 lives that we didn't have to lose. What if one of those lost teenagers was your best friend who hadn't been drinking that night, yet was in the backseat of a car driven by someone who was? What if you were that driver? There are so many unnecessary losses, and none of us seem to want to deal with the consequences. Did you know that 69,000 teens die every year from alcohol consumption? Hashtag, that's a big number. It is a big number. In fact, it's a huge number. So can you imagine how many teens drink and don't have to deal with the immediate consequences? Whoa. 140 million alcoholics in the world today? Hashtag, we need change. Such a drastic transformation didn't happen overnight. One beer at a random party may not spark an immediate addiction, but that random party can become regular nights at home, and that one beer can turn into cases. Studies have shown that kids that drink before the age of 15 are 4 times more likely to become dependent on alcohol than those who don't drink before they turn 21. Do you really want to have to reach for a bottle of wine or whiskey just to make it through the day? Incredible. Over 150,000 people aged 13 to 24 die every year from drug overdoses. So alcohol is not the only culprit ruining teenage lives left and right. Drugs have woven their way into the lives of many teens in forms ranging from painkillers to heroin. A Huffington Post article said that nearly 1 in 10 teens admit to smoking marijuana 20 times or more a month. That means that in a classroom of 20 kids, 2 of those kids are likely to smoke marijuana once almost every day. Marijuana may not be a huge concern for many of us, but being the gateway drug that it is, it can lead someone down a path that is completely unforgiving. I witnessed this exact situation with someone I was very close to when I was younger. On day 1, he came over to meet the new neighbors, and after that, he never seemed to leave. He always came over to see my brother, but I always ended up joining in on the rubber band gunfights and video game fun. Everything seemed fine until he entered high school. He had never really cared for his average lifestyle in a middle-class community and was desperate to find something that would make his life different. Well, he found different, and marijuana was the drug of choice. It was no secret to us or his family, and yet no one did anything. We assumed that he would eventually realize that this new lifestyle was foolish and dangerous, but this phase in his life didn't end in high school. Regardless of his poor decisions, his intelligence led him to Virginia Tech, but after just 3 semesters, he was failing almost all of his classes and had more than a few run-ins with the law. He was going downhill fast, but it was still a shock. No one really knows what happened his last night at Tech, but the autopsy confirmed the cause: overdose. How could he do that to himself, to his family? I knew that drugs were bad, but I never thought that they would take someone I cared about. It was my first real loss, and it's difficult for me to grasp, but I do know that despite all of his faults, I really did love him like a brother. Hashtag rest in peace, Ryan. It didn't have to end this way. Who here has a Twitter, Facebook, YouTube account, or even a MySpace? I'm going to assume that everyone has some connection to social networking. In this new era of technology, social media can be used by all ages, races, and languages. When I came across popular prevention programs like Above the Influence and Drug Free World, I found that each site made it possible to speak directly to teens through social networking. It gives every teen, adult, and organization a voice easily audible to millions. So whether it's a YouTube video or a Facebook status, we may be able to prevent more peers from falling into the luring black hole of drugs and alcohol. I want you to know the truth behind what they say. I want you to get involved with every connection you have. And I want you to help me make sure that no one else ends up like Ryan, Madison, Sam, or whoever else you know or I know that has been affected by substance abuse. Together, we can change this pattern. Hashtag, are you ready?
You can see why the judges had a hard time in picking students, because both these ladies have done a marvelous job. They did ultimately pick a first place and a second place, and the only difference, there's no difference in quality, but there is a difference in the size check that each of them gets. So Robin De Azagro was our first place winner at our district contest, and she has a check for $200. And Madison, who did a wonderful job as well, Madison Flick from Bluefield, gets a check for $150. But you can tell that they didn't do it for the money. Thank you, ladies.